Hi guys, Irina here and welcome back to my channel where I review everything tech. Today, let's talk about the OnePlus 10 Pro. I've been testing this phone for a few weeks now and I have a lot to say about it. I already have a camera comparison video on my channel featuring the OnePlus 10 Pro. Check it out if you haven't already, but I will summarize everything about this phone in this video, so without further ado, let's dive into this review. Just a few words about the design of the OnePlus 10 Pro. It comes in two colors. This particular unit is in volcanic black, and you could also get this phone in emerald forest. I would say the dimensions and shape of this phone reminds me of its predecessor, the OnePlus 9 Pro. They feel very similar when I hold them in my hands. The weights of these phones are practically the same. The only thing is that the alert slider on the OnePlus 10 Pro has moved slightly higher. For me personally, now it feels less convenient since it's harder to reach, even though I have pretty long fingers, but I guess for people with larger hands it will be just right. When it comes to the display, we have a 6.7-inch AMOLED display on this phone, same display size as we had on its predecessor, the OnePlus 9 Pro. OnePlus phones have always been pretty good when it comes to displays. The OnePlus 10 Pro features QHD+ resolution and 120Hz refresh rate, just like the OnePlus 9 Pro, so unsurprisingly, the display on this phone is very sharp, responsive, and smooth. However, this time around, OnePlus claims that they have improved adaptive brightness and color accuracy on the new OnePlus 10 Pro, and let's talk about it. I want to start with color accuracy, and if you ask me, this upgrade is pretty noticeable, especially when it comes to whites. If you put the OnePlus 9 Pro and the 10 Pro side by side, you will see that the whites look more realistic and clean on the OnePlus 10 Pro, while they appear slightly yellowish on the 9 Pro. And as expected, my camera doesn't pick up this difference, but it's important to note that, of course, when you're using just the OnePlus 9 Pro, you don't really see that yellowish tint, but this difference becomes pretty obvious when you look at these phones side by side. However, if you ask me, I cannot say that this is a game changer. I mean, the display on the 9 Pro is also pretty good, and I've never had any complaints about it. Speaking of the improved adaptive brightness on the OnePlus 10 Pro, if you've been a OnePlus user for a while, you're probably aware of the adaptive brightness issue that some users have experienced with older models, mostly because the brightness level was too dim or abnormally high. With the OnePlus 10 Pro, so far I haven't experienced any problems at all. This phone learns your display brightness preferences and then automatically adjusts brightness accordingly. On my first day with this phone, I had to make some brightness adjustments myself, but this phone has learned my brightness preferences in different light conditions right away, so now I rarely have to manually tweak the brightness, whether I'm outdoors or indoors. My only complaint about this display is that I wish it was brighter, because every time I use this phone outdoors, I feel that the brightness on this phone could be better. Next, let's talk about the camera setup and the camera performance. We have a triple camera on the OnePlus 10 Pro, including the main camera, an ultra-wide camera, and a telephoto camera. As I previously said, I already have a very comprehensive camera comparison video on my channel featuring the OnePlus 10 Pro. That video will be helpful if you want to see in detail how good the camera performance on this phone is and how it compares to other flagships. From my experience, the camera performance on the OnePlus 10 Pro feels pretty much the same as it has been for the past 3 years. I mean, with the launch of a new flagship every year, the camera performance on OnePlus phones definitely gets slightly better every time, but at the same time, with this crazy competition we have these days in the phone industry, sometimes I feel like the pace of improvement on OnePlus phones is not fast enough. So, if you ask me, the camera performance on the OnePlus 10 Pro is pretty good. More often than not, I get nice photos and videos, but at the same time, I cannot call the camera on this phone reliable because there are always some photos and videos I feel disappointed about, especially when it comes to colors. Sometimes they're far from the real colors. Like in this photo where the bridge looks blue for some reason. And speaking of blue, I've noticed that the videos from the OnePlus 10 Pro often have too much of this blue tint. Like here where all the buildings look blue, and this is nothing close to what I saw in reality. And I know that, say, my Galaxy S22 Ultra or the iPhone 13 Pro Max would do a better job. And in the past, the OnePlus phones were much more affordable and it was just easier to justify some flaws in the camera performance. But now the new OnePlus 10 Pro costs almost $1,000. So this is definitely not a budget phone anymore, and I think that OnePlus should work even harder in the camera department to be able to compete at this price point. A few more photo and video samples for you guys. When it comes to the camera app on the OnePlus 10 Pro, we have a lot of little changes and upgrades here when compared to its predecessor. One of the most important ones is that now you have the night mode on the telephoto camera, and also you get some new creative modes on the OnePlus 10 Pro, like the 150-degree mode, where you could go beyond the default ultra-wide photo and take a 150-degree field of view photo. It's kind of like a fisheye mode. Also, we get here the movie mode, which is like the pro mode, but for the videos. Then we have a dedicated long exposure mode and the dual view video, where you can simultaneously use the rear and the front camera. By the way, I was really surprised that the OnePlus 10 Pro doesn't have the macro mode. And at first, I thought, oh, maybe they just changed the location of it, I'll find it later. But no, there is no macro mode on the OnePlus 10 Pro, which is kinda shocking. But keep in mind that you could always use the telephoto camera to take close-ups. Next, let's talk about the battery. We have a 5000 mAh battery on the OnePlus 10 Pro. Last time in my unboxing video, I did a charging test using this 65-watt charger and the cable that I got in the box with my OnePlus 10 Pro. It took just 34 minutes to fully charge this phone from 0% to 100, which is very impressive. But now let's try this 50-watt wireless charger from OnePlus. I bought it last year with my OnePlus 9 Pro and I was very impressed with the charge speed. My phone completely died, so it turned off, and let's begin. 15 minutes later and my phone is already at 32%, which is pretty good for wireless charging. In 30 minutes we get 62%. And in 53 minutes this phone is already fully charged. Yeah, this is an incredible result for wireless charging, but with OnePlus charging technologies, I'm not even surprised. When it comes to charging features, this phone supports reverse wireless charging, just like its predecessor, the OnePlus 9 Pro, so nothing really new here. And speaking of the battery life, the OnePlus 10 Pro definitely has a longer battery life than its predecessor, the OnePlus 9 Pro, most likely thanks to the new display, which is more power efficient. This phone can easily last me through the day with moderate use, but at the same time, I have to admit that there are phones that are much more impressive in terms of battery life. So I would say the battery life on the OnePlus 10 Pro is good, but not outstanding. Now let's talk about the speakers and the audio quality. We have dual stereo speakers on the OnePlus 10 Pro. Visually, the bottom speakers look absolutely identical on the 10 Pro and the 9 Pro, but the in-display speakers look slightly different. Comparing these phones side by side, the OnePlus 10 Pro sounds noticeably louder. The audio quality is pretty good, so no complaints here. When it comes to security features, nothing really new here. We have the face unlock and the fingerprint sensor, but it's important to note that now the fingerprint sensor is back to its normal place. On the OnePlus 9 Pro, the fingerprint sensor was located weirdly low and it was super uncomfortable and hard to reach, so I'm glad this thing was fixed on the OnePlus 10 Pro. The fingerprint sensor is very reliable on this phone. I haven't experienced any problems with it. In terms of speed, I would say it's pretty much the same as the one on its predecessor. Honestly, I haven't noticed any difference. The OnePlus 10 Pro runs on Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. By the way, the good news is that OnePlus has added a 256GB storage option in the US, so if the storage limitation was something that was holding you back from buying this phone, now maybe it's time to revisit the whole thing. When it comes to overall performance, so far it's been great. It's very snappy. I don't really feel any difference in terms of overall performance when compared to its predecessor because both of these phones are very capable. So far, I've had only one minor glitch with my camera app on this phone, but it was pretty hot outside, so maybe that was the reason. A simple app reopening solved the problem, but yeah, in general, this phone feels very zippy and smooth. Of course, gaming is not a problem on this phone. You actually get a lot of cool gaming features here. And I've also tried to do some video editing and it's been pretty smooth. So I want to summarize this review with the question I'm constantly asking myself. Why would I want to switch from my OnePlus 9 Pro to the 10 Pro? What would be the main reason? And the truth is, I can't really find it. I mean, there are definitely some improvements on this phone, like a better display and a longer battery life, louder speakers, new camera features, but still, when you're actually using this phone, these upgrades don't feel that drastic. So, if you're currently using the OnePlus 9 Pro, I would definitely keep this phone for at least 1 year longer. But of course, if you own an older model, say the OnePlus 7 Pro, maybe now is a good time for an upgrade. I'm pretty sure you will enjoy your new OnePlus 10 Pro. That's all for this video, guys. Let me know which phone you're using now and if you have plans to upgrade this year. Thank you so much for watching and see you in the next video.